Welcome back, everybody. Did we hear any of that, or am I starting from scratch? So, okay, we're going to start our second section here. This is our first of two technical panels. We've got everybody's going to give a quick introduction to the work that they're working through. As you're listening to their presentations, please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we're going to save quite a bit of time at the end for discussion with everyone. So our first technical panelist is Adam Cohen. Adam is the Senior Research Manager and Innovation Mobile Research Transportation Sustainability Research Center of the University of California, Berkeley. And I just mangled that, Adam, so maybe you can correct me in your own introduction, but I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'd like to talk today a little bit about some research that we've done on integrating transportation into smart cities. So we did this research with the Mineta Transportation Institute of San Jose State University. And what we found through our research is that, a smart city is really kind of an ecosystem of domains, pilots, and innovations, and stakeholders working together at different city scales, everywhere from the neighborhood to regional levels. And we're seeing a lot of different pilot projects initiatives across smart city domains. This figure here really just kind of shows, these different domains. And what we kind of found through our research is that, a smart city is really not a city itself, but really kind of a region of collaborators and innovators. And they become progressively more advanced, as that integration becomes and that collaboration becomes more widespread. And one of the things that we found through kind of our research is that we're really seeing kind of the emergence of four types of kind of smart cities. We're kind of seeing, some tech-oriented cities and regions, really kind of driven by innovation, and also with peak challenges such as affordability on the housing side. We're also seeing kind of economic revival regions that are really trying to kind of reinvent themselves from either offshoring or manufacturing declines. We're seeing a lot of growth cities that are focused on kind of a lot of outward expansion and are more focused on kind of funding new infrastructure. And then we're seeing small and rural communities really trying to kind of reinvent themselves in terms of things like placemaking. So our research really in this realm found that, the term smart cities really shouldn't focus on cities themselves, but really should kind of focus more at a regional level in terms of how jurisdictions and public agencies engage with one another. We've also found that the implementation of smart city initiatives really kind of varies based on organizational structure, leadership, and champions within an organization, and that it really requires omnidirectional leadership, both vertically through an organization and laterally across agencies and stakeholder groups. And finally, there's a lot of concerns with equity related to smart cities and, concerns that we may be leaving vulnerable populations behind. And so our research really shows that, we really need to be focused on quality of life metrics rather than specifically the technology aspects of smart cities. I'm going to kind of leave those kind of brief remarks there. I've included my contact information here, and I'm really looking forward to participating in this panel discussion today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Next up is Kristen Torres Pauling. She is the Sustainability Program Director at the County of Los Angeles in the County of Los Angeles Chief Sustainability Office. I have to admit, most of you guys have really ridiculous titles to say out loud. So, but go ahead, Kristen.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think that's accurate, Dave. So I have trouble spitting it out sometimes myself. So appreciate the invitation and the introduction. I don't have slides. I'm just going to speak a little bit for my introduction. I'm the Sustainability Program Director for the Chief Sustainability Office at the County of Los Angeles, which is exactly like you said, Dave, a bit to say, which means that I'm part of a small team that is a regional sort of thought partner for the county government, but also the county at large, the 10 million person region. So what we do at the Chief Sustainability Office is support the Board of Supervisors whenever they have inquiries about sustainability issues. But we also, our main function was to put together a sustainability plan. And we did that, and it was adopted in August of 2019. And that plan is the most ambitious regional sustainability plan in the nation, to our knowledge. And we're very proud of it. And I specifically wanted to talk about a few of the themes. Almost every part of the topic of this panel has some piece of the sustainability plan, but I'm going to focus on the electrification and wildfire piece, so we can get into more of that in the discussion. But just to highlight a couple aspects of what the sustainability plan has to do with the topic of today. The plan is organized around 12 very ambitious goals, and then strategies and specific actions that the county will take on to achieve those strategies and goals. But I think the most relevant one for today is actually our shortest and easiest one to remember, which is why I don't even need slides for it. It's a fossil fuel free Los Angeles, which is, again, just a handful of words, but that's a very earth-shaking type of approach, given that Los Angeles, not only do we use lots of fossil fuels, so thinking about the demand side of that, but we're also the second largest oil producing county in the state. And California is, of course, a very large oil producing state in the country. So that's saying something. So we're talking both about the demand side and the supply side of fossil fuels and the relationship to climate change. So of course, we're even addressing this because the Board of Supervisors committed to the Paris Climate Accord actually in 2018, and that might have already been 2017. So several years ago. And why that is important, because as of a couple of weeks ago, the United States is no longer part of the Paris Climate Accord, thanks to the Trump administration. So we are part of a coalition of actors, including specifically county governments, who have stepped up to the plate and said, we are still in, we're going to continue to meet these goals. We're going to hold ourselves to these goals and push ourselves to achieve them in the absence of a federal strategy. So we're doing our part there, and which necessitated, we did some technical work and necessitated that type of ambition. So that sort of feeds into so many parts of our economy and the way that we structure government here. But so I'll just highlight. So part of the wildfire aspect that I wanted to bring up for us was the actions in the sustainability plan around limiting new development in high wildfire or high climate risk areas. And of course, one of our most visible climate risks in Los Angeles for many communities is our wildfire risk. So we have to think about the different types of tools, land use tools, building code, all kinds of tools that we might be able to think of that sort of re-examine the types of developments that we've done that sort of ignore that climate risk that can be devastating to communities, to people's individual wealth, and just sort of their well-being if you have to face that type of devastation of your home or your business being impacted by wildfire. So we're trying to think of ways to no longer put communities in harm's way when we know that harm's way is impending. And the other aspect, so we're really open to ideas about how to do that, because it's not, the toolkit is not even established of how that works. The other aspect that I would highlight is, of course, our decarbonization of buildings and transportation, right? Transportation is our largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, buildings is our second. So we have a whole slew of decarbonization efforts and electrification efforts related to vehicles. So of course, we're going to need to build out our infrastructure. We set quantitative goals for the county ourselves to install publicly available infrastructure, and also just for the region as a whole, where we needed to be in the years 2025, 2035, and 2045. And now we actually have state action on that with the governor's executive order around banning the sale of internal combustion vehicles by the, I'm already forgetting here, 2035. So this is a rapidly evolving space, and it's amazing to see the progress already since the adoption of the plan in 2019. And then electrification and decarbonization of buildings. So it's not a straightforward thing to do here. The county has nearly every climate zone that you have in the state. So we're thinking high desert areas, mountain areas, the coastal areas, all of those are extremely diverse. How do we come up with solutions that work in all those places? And then overlaying all of this, we think it's so important to focus on equity as we address the entirety of the plan, but especially the decarbonization and wildfire issues, because our systems right now are so entrenched in protecting, just thinking about the wildfire, landed homeowners. If you are a renter, the picture is totally different. If you're a worker who's hired to protect somebody's home, during wildfire, it's extremely different. So we've sort of collected some climate stories and have been really trying to think through the vulnerabilities of climate change on the ground now. And we'll looking forward to talking more about how we can do that all together. So thanks, Dave. I'll hand it off.
Great, thank you. Next up is Wendy Katagi. Did I get that right? And
Yeah.
I will say your title slowly so I don't mangle it. So you're a senior manager at Watershed and Eco Restoration Services at Stillwater Sciences. Almost got it. So go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. I am going to try to share screen here. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, but sometimes it takes a moment for it to show up.
Okay, go ahead, get started. So glad to be here. Stillwater Sciences is a consulting firm that is dedicated to urban biodiversity, access to nature, and recovery of our threatened and endangered species. We are working with the mayor's office in the city of LA on a first ever pilot project for recovery of the endangered southern steelhead trout. And this is a pinnacle species that also paves the way for recovery of many other aquatic and riparian species. There's many partners involved, the Council for Watershed Health, all of our resource agencies, nonprofits like Friends of the LA River, Arroyo Seco Foundation, and many other partners. And in thinking about sustainability, we need to think about target species and ecosystems. How can we enhance those in this very biodiverse region of the world? And so as part of that, the city has adopted a biodiversity index and is measuring our success in pilot projects to help recover these charismatic umbrella species like the steelhead, our mountain lions, El Segundo blue butterfly, and California scrub jay, among many other species. Stillwater's been working for the last year on the conceptual ecological model, looking at limiting factors, and addressing steelhead recovery watershed-wide through this conceptual model. The project does align with the Mayor's Sustainability Plan and many other adopted policies and plans toward habitat and alignment with our federal, state, regional, and local programs and plans. This is an illustrative of a transformed channel, the LA River. And can you see my screen?
No, I'm sorry, we are not able to, but we can.
That's too bad. Okay. There's this integration with Metro Bikeways, which also will be along the LA River. So the sustainability about access to nature and providing new opportunities for children, adults, and families to face the river as opposed to turning our backs to the river is a major focus for the project. The LA River Fish Passage Project is about 5 miles. It goes through downtown Los Angeles, past the Arroyo Seco and to the soft bottom areas of the LA River. We're involved in recovery efforts, like I was saying, habitat improvements throughout Southern California, And so I was trying to show some slides, but basically the focus for sustainability is really on implementing the policies, programs, and working with the communities to bring our cultural values and appreciation of our resources in protecting and enhancing the habitats for our target species. Thank you.
Right. Wendy, I did see some of the photos that you were going to show before this, and there are some stunning photos. So maybe you can put a link in the chat for how people can see some of the images you were just discussing.
Sure can.
So moving on, I did try to practice this. Is it Ilke? Did I get that part right? That's Turkish, as I understand, and Altanias, but I'm sure I mangled that. But Ilke is the Chief Data Science Officer at the San Diego Supercomputer Center at the University of California, San Diego. And take it away, Ilke. Do you have slides to share?
No, I'll just talk.
Okay.
Hi, everyone, and great try. And I hope I'm okay if I understand you're talking about me. I'm Ilkay Altuntaş, and I speak to you as the director of the Wildfire Lab today. And Wildfire has a mission to turn data computing and artificial intelligence methods into a utility for scientific and societal wildland fire and other related hazards applications. So our goal is to enable science and the practice of science in applications using data and model sharing and AI. And our interdisciplinary team has fire science, data, AI, cyber infrastructure, and science to practice experts. So we are a convergence team, so to say. And we have partnerships with a number of different organizations spanning academic institutions, public agencies, utilities, as well as cross-sector industry partners. LA Fire Department, LA County, Ventura, Orange County Fire Authority are, for instance, our partners, and we work together on both scientific and operational programs together. So why work in this area? As we all know, wildfires are becoming more frequent and fire behavior is changing to be more destructive due to a combination of natural and anthropogenic factors, that's us, which makes applied fire research very important and time critical right now. 18 of the most destructive fire happened in the last 2 decades in California. Every year, there's more added to that list. So this is both a hazard in terms of just a direct fire hazard, and resilience issues come up with that to our communities, but it's also public health and is reason for other related hazards like mudslides and floods and other environmental issues. And science-based decisions for fire mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery need dynamic data-driven models. When there's a lot of change, you need to learn about that change and make it a part of the action, so to say. And proactive action, that's the part, fire management, can be done to reduce destruction by wildfire, and it can be optimized through integration of data models. But this hasn't been fully achieved yet because there are consistencies between data and modeling needs and actual sensitivities of wildfire behavior in various conditions and the models themselves, how they are modeled to behave. And, as I just said, when it comes to modeling, one size doesn't fit all. We need many generated by community, and with data-driven techniques can help with generation of those further more local and context-savvy models. So that's our solution. Our solution is to, based on that problem in that sense, to scale our earlier work. We had a lot of work in the dynamic data-driven fire modeling. So our goal is to scale that earlier work with continuous community-driven capability enhancements, so to say, for data creation and access and modeling, and with the main objective being a commons platform right now to build and enable AI innovations to power hazards applications, and fire science being the first and foremost of those. And that operational use can relate to mitigation, planning, response, and recovery. So it's not just one phase, but if we get it right, because fire and hazards is becoming a data-rich domain, there's a lot of technology that can help with it. But integrating that data with an evolving sort of suite of tools and technologies that create multi-fidelity application that translate the technology into practice is important. So this continual refinement and community integration, and also public engagement and training and building resilient communities are a part of this. And I think through that, we can collectively achieve some more sustainable future, because we need fire. We live in fire-adapted ecosystems, but there's good fire and there's the type of fires we are having right now. Find the balance between those.
Excellent. Well, it's striking to me that we can talk about fish, oil, county government, computer science in its coherent panel, which it's fun for me. I actually have my second career after being a musician was being a software developer. So I like all these connections. Let's talk about, maybe Ilkay, I'll start with you. You're building tools for people like Kristen at work at a government level to have tools to work from. Do you see there, like, we've always had some tools, we've always had some information, but what are some of the techniques that you're seeing now that are transforming the way we think about these problems?
So, with a cliche, I think we are going through a data revolution, right? Over the last decade, remote sensing use has increased, but just not just that. There's social media. There's many sources of information that we could bring together. That's generally referred to as big data. So we can actually use multimodality information in decision support. To be able to do that, we need to believe in transparency of data and openness, because there's a lot of data to go around, but there's not one platform in a neutral way that brings this data together in a responsible way. Not everything has to be out and open, but the people who need the data and can access that in a responsible way should be able to access that. So that's been one of our main goals, is to create a data platform to make data findable, accessible, interoperable between different applications and modeling libraries, and also reusable in different contexts. And while doing that in a way that reduces biases and inaccuracies and uncertainties in the data, so we can actually create an environment that fuels acceleration. And I think there's a role for public-private partnerships there, because when you have data, there are many people that can take advantage of it and turn that into value. One of the examples, for instance, we have a program at SDG&E, our energy company. They do models of our county in a high-resolution weather and field models. And what they're generating is useful to their operations, but now they're enabling use of that model products in scientific applications through this platform. So suddenly you're expanding communities who can take use of this type of data.
I like that your response was a technical question and you gave an equity response, which I think also speaks to how interconnected these topics are. Wendy, I think you're kind of somewhere between, right? You're taking data and implementing it into systems. A similar question to you. Where do you see these connection points?
The connection points are really important, because our science-based research and just learning from nature and monitoring the success of our pilot projects is vital toward achieving the goals of sustainability for the city and our larger communities. So a lot of our study questions and our work is focused on taking data that is historic. You think about like historical ecology, geomorphology from a perspective of watershed science, and then looking at the more current, bringing everything current to how is our water quality right now? What are we doing to improve it? And then for species, how are we doing at managing invasive species, reaching out to our communities in stewardship and learning and hands-on community involvement. So I think just in terms of implementing policy that is really good, that speaks for the people, is based in this understanding of science, data management, monitoring how well we're doing with recovery actions, and then sharing that back up through the tree of knowledge-based solutions, which is not just on the city's level, but really moving up to federal recovery actions and state actions.
Yeah, excellent. Adam, I'll turn it over to you. We're talking transportation. Yeah, I think you mentioned the concept of thinking regionally in your little opening remarks, but kind of build on what these our previous speakers have spoken about.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work in on-demand mobility, vehicle automation, shared mobility, and electrification over the years. And, we think that this is a really exciting time, but also a challenging time as well. It's really exciting because, just before COVID, we saw a lot of developments in this space to really support vehicle electrification, micromobility, and other strategies that could potentially reduce carbon emissions. With that being said, though, we do see a lot of potential challenges on the horizon in light of COVID that I think we should all be kind of paying attention to. The first one is telework. Telework is really great, but we also don't know fully what the impacts of telework are going to be. Telework has the potential to reduce some trips, but could also induce others, such as midday trips or other types of trips that are non-commute oriented. So I think that's one challenge. The other challenge that we see in the current COVID environment coming out of the recovery is that there's been this real move towards larger, more suburban homes, and we see this in the housing data, as well as the home building data. And this is a little bit worrisome from a sustainability perspective, because this means that people are moving possibly to more auto-oriented environments, and that telework may be kind of changing where people live. And so that has the potential to impact kind of sustainability in people's lifestyles. So there's some indicators to watch here, I think, as we come out of COVID. And we need to be kind of, looking at these from a policy perspective and seeing how that's going to impact transportation behavior.
Great. Kristen, turning to you're riding on top of all of what we've just talked about at the county level. So how do you pull from, the learnings of these, whether it comes to fire, transportation, species restoration? I mean, how do you manage just navigating all of that? And
I know you want to respond to each of these.
Yeah, I don't even know how to ask a coherent question to you, but I'll just let you go.
Yeah, no, I think this is all really relevant, and to your point, Dave, our sustainability plan does cover, essentially all of these topics. And I'm actually a transportation planner, so I have lots of things to talk about with COVID and BMT increases and decreases and where those are. But I think so to how we manage the process and how I think it's less of management and more of thinking about expanding our partnerships, right? There is no way that our office is actually 4 people. So we aren't doing all of this stuff ourselves. It is really down to thinking about partnerships and using the entirety of the county government. The county government has over 100,000 employees. We're essentially a state government in sort of size. So the sustainability plan is actually predicated on actions being taken at the county department level. So our public works department is, I would say, involved in almost everything that we've discussed, from the transportation to biodiversity to fire management. So that's just one example of the integration across county government and the roles, I think, that are uniquely county, that cities can't address specifically. And I'll be talking about our public health role. So that we're thinking about the impacts of climate, obviously top everybody's COVID right now. They have a group that we're the only one, I think, in the state, besides the state government, that has a climate change group within public. So I think it is recognizing that, it is harder to do the work this way, cross collaborative, and sort of cross sectorally, and by cross sectorally, I mean private sector, academia, public sector, and nonprofit space. It is harder to do that work, but I think it is worth the investment of time to build those relationships up front so that we can draw on the work in San Diego, so that we can draw on the work that Stillwater is doing with the city's biodiversity index, which I know we are working to do. And so we can understand the learnings from MetTrans. So I think that and actually the one thing I will bring up about, just because it's just my favorite topic, transportation is one of the COVID impacts. One of the sectors that is growing the most is freight and logistics because of our, the new way we've arranged our lives. And those are not great jobs necessarily. And from the warehousing, and then we have so many issues of indirect air pollution from the expansion of warehousing and the expansion of goods movement. So it's a good boon from some growth sector perspective, but are thinking about what kind of jobs come out of that and who bears the brunt of the air pollution. There's ways to manage that, but we do have to think about it in that way. So it's not even managing the process. It's really learning to invest time to build partnerships.
Great. Well, I have about 20 questions to ask each of you, but unfortunately we are waning on our time today. But I want to say thank you all for jumping in to a great conversation. And should people want to get in touch with you, I assume you can put your information in the chat for them to reach out. And I believe we are going to switch over here to a new speaker here in just a moment. So, but I wanted to thank you all for taking the time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.